Okay, so today we're going to cover some famous historical diseases. For what it's worth, the term disease actually just comes from being at dis-ease, which slowly turned into disease. First one we're going to talk about is dysentery. Anybody that has played the game Oregon Trails has likely seen this image, and then you have to start all over again. Dysentery is an intestinal disease. It really comes down to having bloody, gross diarrhea. You are super dehydrated, and there's really not much you can do once you have dysentery. Now, the reason this spreads so much is normally it's in these gross military camps where they're not very sanitary. You're just touching a lot of the same stuff. These germs and this bacteria is going to spread from one person to another. There is no hiding dysentery from anybody. Many famous people, especially in history, have died from dysentery. Edward the Black Prince, King Henry V dies of dysentery, Francis Drake dies of dysentery. It is, I'm assuming, very, very painful, but nonetheless, many of us have died of dysentery along the Oregon Trails. Another disease that's sort of similar to dysentery is cholera, very deadly. Europe goes through a handful of cholera epidemics. You get cholera by drinking infected water or by eating fish that are in this infected water. These fish then are very undercooked, hence cholera. Same with dysentery. You get severe cases of diarrhea, stomach pain, fevers, all the classics. Some famous people that died from cholera include Peter Tchaikovsky, who is a famous Russian musician, and an American president. James K. Polk dies of cholera. Fun fact, James K. Polk has the shortest tenure of anybody that left the White House. So after he wasn't president anymore, he's only alive for another, I think it's 30 days or so, dying of cholera. Okay, naturally, I can't bring up disease without at least talking about plague doctors and mentioning the bubonic plague, the Black Death. Plague doctors would actually put herbs in the beaks of these just to make the smell somewhat resistible. That said, you had about a 1 to 15% chance of surviving the Black Plague that wipes out pretty much half the population of Europe. It spreads by not the rats, but it's the fleas on the rats. The plague will eventually become an airborne illness, meaning you didn't even have to touch people in order to catch this. When then, it spreads like absolute wildfire. There are reports that says people are laid out like lasagna, just layers of dead people. The bubonic plague is named after that. It's actually the black, basically, spots you get all over your body. Per usual, you get the chills, shivers, diarrhea, fever, all the goods. One of the most famous outbreaks is actually the plague of Justinian, who was the emperor of the Byzantine Empire, which is essentially the Roman Empire after it had shattered. Nonetheless, look into these. They're, of course, very interesting, wipe out a ton of people historically. The bubonic plague is still around today, of course, not nearly as to what it was historically speaking, but I'm running out of time. Hopefully you learned something. For always, love you all.